نفس کبابی سرخی لبهای توی ما کبابی سرخی لبهای توی ما نفس شو عاشق و شیدای توی ما خریداری ناز و اهدای توی ما خریداری ناز و
Good morning once again. Please welcome to the stage Vice President of Community Engagement at CBIZ and Board Chair of the KC Chamber, Carolyn Watley.
Good morning, everyone. Oh my goodness. It's so exciting to be here, and welcome to our first Power of Diversity breakfast in person in 2 years. That's worthy of applause for sure, definitely. Yay. So the Chamber is excited to celebrate today's ACE Award recipients and our champions of diversity. As you know, the ACE Awards honor those who are promoting diversity and inclusion in the workforce. We're so proud of today's honorees, and we can't wait to learn more about them. And our champion of diversity recognizes a business or nonprofit that's made an impactful commitment to embracing diversity in the workplace, diversity supplier partnerships, and in the community. This year, we are very excited to honor a for-profit champion, and for the first time, a nonprofit champion as well. So we will get to those awards in a moment. But first, we would like to open with a land acknowledgement. This is an acknowledgement that the land we are standing on right now has a rich story that began long before Kansas City was settled. I ask you to please draw your awareness to your principal relationship with the earth, and if possible, making direct contact. On the traditional land and the ancestral home of Native Americans, Indigenous, and First Nations people, I ask you to join me in acknowledging the 98 tribal groups from our area, including the Kickapoo, Kanza, Osage, Otos, Missouri, Potawatomi, Sioux, Shawnee, and Wyandot tribes. We honor the elders, both the past and the present. This calls us to commit to continuing to learn the stories of these people and how to be better stewards of the land that we inhabit. Thank you. Our program today is full. Not only do we hand out awards, but we will also welcome our keynote speaker, Karen Daniel. Karen has had an impact on nearly every aspect of Kansas City, the business community, the civic world, military organizations, and now our Kansas City Royals. Plus, Rodney Sampson from Opportunity Hub will talk about how business and civic leaders can make an actionable commitment to diversity and inclusion. Last summer, our community was dealing with a lot. The two biggest issues were the impact of COVID on KC and the world, and the spotlight shining on social justice in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. COVID revealed the lack of equity for Black and Brown-owned small businesses. They operated on smaller margins, had a tougher time accessing capital, and dealt with the health effects of COVID more than their white counterparts. The protests and calls for social justice led all of us to take a good, long look at racial disparities in Kansas City. The Chamber held a series of listening sessions with our Black civic and business leaders and young men and women. That listening session led to action for the KC Chamber. Members of our board recognize the need to be proactive on these issues. We listened to our board members of color as they led the effort to start the Chamber's Social Justice Committee. We also are continuing our diversity, equity, inclusion workshops to help employers prioritize and commit to an equitable workplace. Last December, we helped launch the Welcoming Plan with our partners at Welcoming KC to help make Kansas City a more welcoming community to newcomers, immigrants, and refugees. And this year, as I mentioned, we have added a Champion of Diversity Award for nonprofits because they play a significant role in helping KC thrive. The KC Chamber is just getting started. As we come through the pandemic and help businesses rise, we are excited for the future. But for now, let's honor those here in the present and making this work possible. Please welcome Whitney Bartelli, the Chief Marketing and Strategy Officer from our presenting sponsor, Community America Credit Union.
Thank you, Carolyn, and good morning, everyone. Once again, it's a pleasure for Community America Credit Union to be here to support the important work around diversity, equity, and inclusion that the Kansas City Chamber does. At Community America, diversity, equity, and inclusion is a fundamental driver for the way that we show up at work every day. And it's behind the relationships we build and the experiences that we create for both our members and our employees. And starting at the top with our CEO, Lisa Ginter, we believe that actions should speak louder than words and that all of our members and our employees should feel valued. We take this to heart when it comes to the way that we invest in and we give back to our community. And we're proud to be here today to stand with other businesses to do what it takes to make Kansas City a strong and vibrant city for all to enjoy for generations to come. Today, we're proud to join the Kansas City Chamber and each of you to recognize and celebrate Kansas City leaders and organizations who have demonstrated the passion and the commitment to make Kansas City a role model for positive change. It's now my pleasure to introduce a group of individuals who develop, promote, educate, and advocate on behalf of a diverse workforce and diverse-owned businesses all year long, well beyond this morning's event. Please join me in welcoming from the Chamber's Diverse Business Committee, Nikki Beard, Katasha Kumar, and Rita Strickland.
Thank you, Whitney. Can you imagine starting a new job in the middle of a global pandemic with uncertainty everywhere? Now, can you imagine starting a new job as Vice President of Culture and Inclusion at a time when social justice protests are driving the headlines nearly every day? And it gets better. Can you imagine starting the new job and being the first person in the newly created role? Our first ACE Award winner can because she's living all those scenarios. Take a look at this video featuring Aisha Gardner, Vice President of Culture and Inclusion at Rediscover.
At Rediscover, I oversee our talent acquisition, our marketing and development, our training and quality departments. Also, I lead our diversity and inclusion and culture strategy. I like working in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space because it helps people in no matter where you are, whether you're a client receiving services, whether you are an employee working for a nonprofit, a for-profit, a healthcare system, whether you're just a citizen in our community. A focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion plays a role in helping Rediscover meet its mission because historically, mental health has been and continues to be marginalized. We don't see the same acceptance for individuals to come to work and say, I'm sorry, I'm so late, I had to go see my therapist, or I'm struggling with my anxiety this week, or I had to get my bipolar meds, tweaked, as where we would say I had to get new blood pressure medicine, or, I had to have an annual physical. Rediscover's big idea is our diversity and inclusion strategic plan. IDEA stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Action. we thought the action always has an exclamation point at the end. We thought the action was very important because we can have great strategy written down on paper, but if there is no action behind it, then we just have really great strategy written down on paper. What inspires me, honestly, are my daughters. I look at them and I see everything wonderful in the world, and precious and sweet, and I really want the world to be a better place for them. As an African-American woman, I have African-American daughters, African-American husband, and really just wanting to advocate for making sure that when my daughters go to school, they are treated equitably, that they are included, that they are in a diverse classroom. Empathy plays a big role in diversity, equity, and inclusion because I cannot possibly have every experience, organically. And so I'm able to say, as a Black woman, this is what I've experienced. This is how I felt when I was included or excluded or whatever the situation may have been. And so I can use that to put myself in the shoes of someone else.
Please give a round of applause for our first ACE recipient, Astra Garner, Vice President of Culture and Inclusion at Rediscover. She's accepting the award from last year's recipient, Dr. Andrea Hendricks of Cerner.
All right, our next ACE Award winner knows what it's like to start a new life in a new country. She was born and raised in Malaysia and came to the US more than 30 years ago. This artist and educator is now helping the biggest global brand, one of the biggest global brands in the world, achieve true and meaningful diversity, equity, and inclusion. Here's more about Subhashini Nataraja, the Executive Global Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for VMLY&R.
My title is Executive Global Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I've been here at VMLY&R for, I think I'm nearing my 5th year, or I'm actually in my 5th year, so 5 years. My area of focus is employees, community, and clients, and specifically to help develop, create a vision, and implement an effective strategy to build and to ensure a vibrant culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. My 30 years of design experience of understanding the human heart through art was a prerequisite to the work that I do today. Today at VMLY&R, we proudly champion 12 ERGs, some of which exist as a global scale. I guide each of these groups in their development and offer hands-on support to their operations and programming. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are so important to advertising agencies because we have the power to change, take action, and influence communities. And time after time, we have seen brands miss the mark when it comes to being culturally mindful. From recent Prada to Burberry's products to Pepsi Kendall Jenner's ad, brand lose sight of some of their audiences and the messages that they might be sending. The favorite part of my job is being a change agent who uses storytelling as a tool to educate and create a community of understanding. When I first came into this country, 30 years ago, I introduced myself as Subhashini, and I found that people found it really difficult. I should have taken time to actually educate people how to pronounce my name. The easy route I took was I introduced myself as Suba, to a point where everybody started even dropping off my last name. And it took me 30 years to realize the importance of my real name, the name that my parents gave me, to be connected to my roots, to be connected to my heritage. So this year I took a personal pledge to go back to my name, my given name, the name that I was baptized in a Hindu temple, Subhashini Nadaraja. It means a lot. In Sanskrit, it means the one who speaks the truth. So I'm back again with Subhashini Nadaraja.
Please give another round of applause to ACE Award winner Subhashini Nadaraja.
Our final ACE Award winner of the morning has been involved in advocating for the disabled community long before it became the law. The Americans with Disabilities Act was signed in 1990, but this ACE winner has helped Americans with disabilities for nearly 4 decades. She says her work is about access and helping overcome barriers, whether they're physical or come from people's attitudes. Take a look at this video to learn more about Darla Wilkerson, Executive Director of Disability Inclusion of Greater Kansas City.
I'm the Executive Director of Disability Inclusion of Greater Kansas City. Disability Inclusion of Greater Kansas City is a business-led organization that works with companies to help them advance their disability inclusion efforts in the workplace and marketplace. A lot of corporations, large, mid-size, have diversity and inclusion strategies, but many times disability inclusion is not present, and it's sometimes not even thought of under the umbrella of diversity and inclusion, and so that's where we come in. I've been in the field of employment for people with disabilities for the last 34 years. It's when I first volunteered at a state school for children with very significant disabilities. I have to admit, at first, I wasn't thinking about working in the field of supporting people with disabilities, but I had started my college, career in terms of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and that really seemed to be something I had a passion for. First time I assisted someone in finding a job and maintaining that job, the excitement that they had when they got their first paycheck was what stuck with me forever. Well, access means to me that there's that elimination of barriers. So we have an opportunity to, gain entrance to a building or gain entrance to pass someone's attitudinal barriers. I think the pandemic has probably opened up our eyes even more to the need for access, and especially around mental health services. A lot of employers reached out to our organization during 2020, during all of the upside down work world, because many employees were experiencing mental health issues they'd never had experienced before. So I did many tutorials on how to set up closed captioning. I did a lot of referrals to some live captioners, for companies, and so it really helped expand their disability inclusion efforts in the workplace as well. Favorite part of my job would be really seeing people getting excited about being inclusive. I just think it doesn't matter what part that we're involved in when it comes to being accepting and inclusive of all people. That's really what we should strive for.
Please welcome Darla Wilkerson, Executive Director of Disability Inclusion of Greater Kansas City. Please welcome from our presenting sponsor, Hallmark, Sabrina Wewell, Chief Administrative Officer.
Morning. It's an honor to be here on behalf of Hallmark Cards. a company that's so deeply rooted in Kansas City and really has a mission to put more care into the world and especially more care into our community. You know, our commitment to diversity and inclusion started 111 years ago when our founder, J.C. Hall, made a decision in 1912 to hire the first woman to the creative community. That's really when the women weren't even working outside of the home. And then in 1930, he named the first woman to the board of directors. She was an artist, and her name was Jeanette Lee. This 3 generations of family have really given a lot back to our community, and especially in the founding of the Kansas City Minority Supplier Development Council. And they also helped set up the Mid-America LGBTQ Chamber. They also had an early introduction of a product line called Mahogany in 1987. So our commitment carries forward today and across all of our brands. But in 2020, we all had a collective pause. And during that time, we had to really put our resolve to task, and it shaped the way that we thought about DE&I. And we came out of 2020 a lot stronger in our commitment. So I hope that all of you will see in some of our products. Perhaps you'll pick up a Mahogany card and you'll see our new strategy where we're trying to make sure that the voice is more empowered and uplifted. Or maybe you'll pick up a crayon and it will be the color of your skin because you've picked up a box of our Toy of the Year last year winner, which is called Colors of the World from our Crayola product line. Or perhaps you will actually see yourself represented in one of our Hallmark movies. We know that we've just got a lot more work ahead of us, but our resolve is even stronger now more than ever. You know, the world needs more care out into the world today, and so we feel like our mission is pretty daunting, and we feel very responsible for trying to make sure we bring love and care into the world. And so we will continue to stand up and champion diversity, and that's why it gives me great honor today to represent Hallmark to present this Champion of Diversity Award. The award goes to an entire business and not just one person. When you are the largest employer in Kansas City, you have already a major impact on your community. But over the past few years, this year's Champion of Diversity has made DE&I an intentional part of their everyday operations. So let's learn more about this year's Champion of Diversity, Cerner.
I really value and appreciate Cerner for doing is allowing us a platform to be ourselves, to bring ourselves to work, and to say, what do you need from us to maintain that work-life balance?
Diversity and inclusion at Cerner has evolved. It's been on a journey. In 2008, it was an informal perspective or focus, and in 2018, there was an intentional focus to make it more comprehensive and to really tie it to the strategy of the organization with everything that we do, with organization, talent, and culture. The strengths that I believe of our diversity and inclusion efforts starts at the top. We have board and executive leader commitment. Associate Business Resource Groups formed officially in 2019. We have over 7,000 members that have joined or engaged in this past year, and we're looking to increase capacity over time.
I am one of the co-chairs for the Women in Healthcare section of the Women in Action ABRG, and I'm also a member of the Mosaic ABRG. The ABRGs have really ramped up with, for one, just getting the associates involved and having membership drives. So stepping out of our comfort zones and signing each other up and saying, hey, come join this. There's something for everybody. We've hosted the Let's Talk Diversity sessions, which I thought were absolutely wonderful because it gave me an opportunity as a facilitator to meet so many associates and just to learn the different experiences.
We had 16,000 associates complete that program and spend time building capacity on how do I think about stop breaking in the workplace, bond better, bridge better, so that we can belong better in the workplace. One of the critical initiatives that the CHRO Tracy Platt and I undertook late 2019 was to look at how we could make a bold statement with our CEO Action Signatory Program.
We strive to create a culture that is inclusive and a workforce that is diverse and representative of the markets, clients, and patients we ultimately serve.
It means a lot to have our leaders be involved, but it even goes beyond that. Many of them are part of our Allies in Action series where they've been a part of panels. They've actually shared different videos and ideas around how allyship is so important to advancing gender equity and racial equity in the workplace.
It's honestly an honor to come to work at Cerner every day because I bring so many different bags to the table. As a mom, as a healthcare provider, all of that contributes to what I can do to make Cerner a better place.
Accepting the award for Cerner is Dr. Andrea Hendricks, Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer.
Thank you all. I will say this, if you've watched the Olympics over the last week, you see all of the competition. I want to add one coming up and down the stairs. I think I have that master since I had to participate. Thank you, Greg, for allowing me to do that. Maybe in 4 years we can add that to the plan. But on behalf of Cerner Corporation, I'm honored to accept this award on behalf of the 26,000 associates worldwide, our board, our CEO, Tracy Platt, who's a member of the board. We are doing the work that's needed to advance this. You heard all of the ACE Award winners and the past award winners talk about the need for commitment. We have leadership commitment, we have associate engagement, and we're beginning the journey and we're not gonna stop here. So we're grateful. This means a lot coming from this group. Greg, Joe, and the board, we are honored to do that. I will leave one last message to you. This is a journey, not a sprint. We have to stay committed to this work. We have to build capacity over time. Good, better, best. Never let it rest until our good is better and our better is best. Thank you. We're honored.
Please welcome Silas Doolin III, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at our presenting sponsor, Evergy.
Good morning. Good morning. There we go, church. Here we go. All right. It's good to be here in person. It's good to see actual living, breathing people, not this digitized version of folks that I've been seeing behind screens for the last almost 2 years when you really think about it, 1.5 years. So it's great to be here. I'm Silas Doolin, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Evergy. We at Evergy strive to consistently reevaluate and grow in order to maintain a diverse, equitable, inclusive, people-first culture through empowering a stronger future together. The people-first culture at Evergy is seen in the work that we do with our employees through 4 main core initiatives that we've committed ourselves to from the top. I'll speak to 3 and a little bit more in detail on the 4th, but the first one is our commitment to our employees through development and how we groom, cultivate, and grow our people internally. The second area is around engagement. How are we engaging our employees through our commitment through community service, building a resource of tools for training for a DE&I standpoint, and then also our commitment through our business resource groups at Evergy. The third area is our commitment through talent pipeline and how we are growing talent internally and externally, and how are we branching into those different avenues of bringing in the appropriate talent to our organization. Another way that we're committing to diversity and inclusion, and fourth but not least, is through a monetary standpoint and our commitment to working with small and diverse businesses. And when I say small and diverse businesses, I'm referring specifically to historically underutilized business-owned businesses, disability-owned businesses, women, veteran, Hispanic, LGBTQ+, and the list goes on of those businesses that really represent the culture and the dynamics of our greater Kansas City area. And our award-winning supplier diversity program is the department that's responsible for ensuring that we're putting our money where our mouth is when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. A more equitable future is at the center of the work this next recipient does. For the first time, the Chamber will be crowning a nonprofit champion of diversity. Nonprofits, as we all know, are vital to our greater Kansas City area. Many in this room, those of you all that are watching, streaming through the live stream, I see you, hello. We see you, we recognize you, and we thank you. This nonprofit champion has a vision to transform a once vibrant block into a space where creative entrepreneurship can thrive once again, and people can gather along truths instead of viewing it as a dividing line. Without further ado, I believe we have a video, and I would like to introduce to you all Troost Market Collective.
So this was my route to church every single Sunday. And I would drive past these buildings and just see the possibility and wonder how could it be different? You know, how could this be a vibrant, thriving community like I know it once was?
So we have a grand vision of having a makerspace in this building, and what it will be, we will have residencies for people. So we will be paying, so you don't have to worry about your rent. We'll have equipment in there, and so we hope we can lift that barrier to entry to become a successful artist.
Troost-A-Palooza was really birthed out of our frustration of not having a building. Troost-A-Palooza is not just a festival. The thought that went into what Troost-A-Palooza is was based on our mission, which was how can we bring traditionally, historically divided communities together and curate that festival so that they are able to participate in experiences together to be able to build friendships. It was a way to highlight 6 local Black artists that do incredible work and help them basically lead these 6 communities in an experience that was, quite frankly, life-changing for most people who participated.
Well, I'm an artist director. I also work on the board with Troost Market Collective. Here, I used to grew up in this neighborhood off of 31st and Paseo. And I've seen this area when it was in its heyday, and I also have seen it since it's gone down. And I just felt like it was a perfect program to help pull the communities together. With challenges like the ones we were facing with Black Lives Matter, what was most important is to remember that everybody who had strong emotions about that issue weren't just Black. We decided to focus on positive contributions made by African Americans in our community throughout time. The Tuskegee Airmen, Arthur Ashe, the 3 mayors that we've had in the city. Art is a bridge to communication and access for people to be able to deal with some of the challenging issues of the day.
We want to make sure that when this development comes, we help get businesses in here that are local, that otherwise wouldn't have a storefront or wouldn't have a space to create art. We can't control everything, but we can control some of what goes on inside the Firestone building here. So that is our mission, our vision, why I stay involved. Why we stay involved is to make sure we can steer a little bit of good.
Accepting the award from Troost Market Collective, please welcome co-founder Katie Mabry Van Dieren and Michael Toombs, artist and Troost Market Collective board member.
Thank you so much. This is such a great honor to be the first nonprofit to receive an award here. And Michael and I, we have an organization. They're here, our board. There are 7 of us. And Chrissy Dastrup, my co-founder, who you saw in the video, couldn't be here today. But the 7 of us, though we be small, we be mighty. And we've done all of this in 4 years with the community. So our board, all of us, the 7 of us, we have brought the community together to do this with us. And without Michael here, who led with Chrissy the Black Lives Matter murals, we had thousands of Kansas Cityans come out who believed in that value statement, Black Lives Matter, and I cannot wait to see what we're gonna do in the future. So thank you for supporting us, and Michael, His expertise, he has done some of the biggest creative placemaking in Kansas City now, and we are so grateful to you, and I'd love for you to say a few words.
Thank you, Katie. I just want to say that the arts are going to be the bridge for what our community needs to accomplish and its ability to access those things. Inoculation is our next challenge. It's our next big hurdle. We can't look to the future if we can't get well now. So we're going to be looking at some creative ways to get our public involved in a process that will help them to see the truth in what is necessary for us to heal ourselves. I want to thank Truce Market for its efforts to bring our communities together and offer opportunities for those who've been left behind. And I plan to be a part of every initiative that takes place to do that. So thank you so much for this award. Thank you so much for this event. And look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Please welcome from the KC Chamber, Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Co-Chair of Welcoming KC, Greg Valdivino.
Good morning, and thank you again for being here today and for watching on our live stream. I'm going to go off script just a tiny bit. You know, in all the lessons that my mother taught me, one of the most important one was whenever you go to someone's house and they feed you and they welcome you, make sure that you thank them. So this morning, I would like to thank our servers and the staff who have served our breakfast. Thank you to our sponsors, and most importantly, thank you and congratulations to our ace and champion of diversity. I'm here to introduce our keynote speaker today. She is a woman who has made a tremendous impact in Kansas City, serving the governmental, manufacturing, banking, and nonprofit industries. Some of her many highlights include her role at Black & Beach, where she retired as Executive Director, Chief Financial Officer, and President of the Global Finance and Technology Solutions Division. She was the first Black woman to serve as a chair of the KC Chamber Board in 2017. She held board positions for the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation, Women's Employment, and others. She's also past president of the Kansas City, Missouri Park Board and led the 80 million restoration of Liberty Memorial and was honored to receive the 2020 Athena Leadership Award. And by the way, she's also one of the owners of the Kansas City Royals. Please welcome Karen Daniel.
Good morning. How are all doing? Good? Great. I want to thank the Chamber for giving me this opportunity to talk about the importance and power of diversity. It's vital if we're going to reach the goals that we've set for ourselves, not only in our companies, but in our community and even in our families. It's really, really important. So thank you for this opportunity to speak to a group of people who are doing wonderful things themselves around diversity, equity, and inclusion. A special congratulations to all those who won awards this morning. We appreciate the great work that's being done. You know, I'm here for three primary reasons. One is that I am lucky, and I'll come back to that. Two, I am extraordinarily grateful for the journey I've been on and all those who helped me arrive at where I am. And three, I want to talk a little bit about how much I love Kansas City and why no matter where I go, it's always home, and I can't wait to get back. So starting with the idea of luck. Some of you know where I'm going with this because you've heard me say it before, but I will say it every chance I get. Sometimes we're just lucky in life, and my luck began when I was born, the third of five, to Claudine and Ralph Daniel. And I have nothing but deep, deep love in my heart for my family. Everybody knows that. But it was their upbringing that gave us the ability to address adversity, become tenacious in driving for our goals, and just given us the example on how to be good kids, good family, and give back to our community. The community is an extension of our family. On the gratitude side, Greg just talked about some of the things I've been able to be part of. And I say that because, okay, obviously I did a lot of work, but I wouldn't be standing here if there were not people on my journey who were very intentional about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Imagine in 1992, when I joined Black & Veatch, the engineering and construction world didn't have many people that looked like me. But I was hired by Black & Veatch, and my journey started on that path. And what was unique about my experience at Black & Veatch and being intentional is that I would like to appeal to all the corporations that are represented here today and across the community. Clearly, there's money to be made in DE&I as part of your culture. There are countless studies and research that have been done to indicate that. There's also great value in having people be part of a culture where diversity is who you hire, equity is helping them remove barriers to the point that it becomes a generational success. Inclusion is a sense of belonging, and we have to be really intentional about that. It doesn't just happen. And in my experience at Black & Veatch, one of the things that happened first was the CFO before me came to Black & Veatch and said, "Whoa, where's the diversity?" And he hired me to start the internal audit department at Black & Veatch. Life went on. I eventually became the CFO at Black & Veatch. Spent the last 18 years of my time there as the CFO. What was really very, very good for my career is that the board, and this is my appeal to the corporations also, the board decided for me to really have the optimal skills, I needed to be on an outside board, and specifically a publicly traded board. Not because Black & Veatch was publicly traded. In fact, at that point, we were a partnership. We eventually became employee-owned. But my appeal is boards are looking across this country for diverse talent of all sorts. And Black & Veatch, our board of directors, insisted that I be on a board. That was a game changer for me. My opportunity to see different perspectives externally, and to also gain additional skills related to my CFO job. And ultimately, within 3 months of me joining the Snap-on Tools board, I was also elected to Black & Veatch's board. And I'm saying this because Black & Veatch was very intentional about me having the opportunity to have additional experiences and expertise. So it was very intentional, and it was really a game changer for me. Also, when you think about equity, removing barriers, you could stay in a silo, finance in my case, or once again, the company was very intentional and said, no, you need to understand the operations. You go to Europe every 6 weeks and figure out what's going on with that project over there. And that gave me the knowledge to come back and participate in project reviews and learn risk management and those kinds of things. And then I was proud to teach business acumen around the world. And that was really another game changer for me. When you go to the different countries in Asia, Europe, and Africa that I had the opportunity to experience, then you start to understand culture. You understand how companies create a family environment. You learn empathy skills, which are really about meeting people where they are, as opposed to deciding who they are and what they should be. And all of these experiences really made me ultimately just a better person. When people ask me about what did Black and Beach do for you, it made me a better person because of the people I had the opportunity to work with, for, and side by side. It was a great experience for me. So when I think about, diversity, who you hire, equity, removing barriers, that's an important element. And then inclusion, to me, is the secret sauce. And that's where that sense of belonging. So for me at Black and Beach and in the broader community, I was invited into many things that maybe before me didn't happen. But that inclusion means I can go and say, I don't feel good about this, I don't feel great about that, or I want to do this and I want to do that. And be part of the management team, not just be a person off to the side. We had a leadership team. And that inclusion, to me, is really what we in Kansas City can work on so that we can make sure we reach our goals. Now, I want to say that the profit, culture, and impact. The companies that are here and the companies that are really focused on DE&I are having a greater impact, not only just making money, but having a greater impact across communities. And that's a really, really impactful piece of what companies should do. And I'm here again to say thank you to all the work that's being done in our community. So when you think about the whole professional deal, I think I'm more identified with the community, and I'm very proud of that, the work that I've done in the community. So in addition to my opportunity to serve on a board outside of Black and Beach, be on the Black and Beach board, we had a deal I could have 3 boards, and the third would be for the community. And that board at the time was the Women's Employment Network. And wow, what a learning experience and what an impact, removing barriers and breaking cycles. And that's what the Women's Employment Network was all about, and I learned about the importance of breaking cycles. So that was part of my professional journey, but I really want to talk about the community, because that's what we're here about. And I remember 5 years ago, don't remember who all was in the room, but 5 years ago, we were in a conference room at Black and Beach working on the Chamber's strategic plan. And we came up with this tagline, a community that works for all. And I was just giddy about it. I thought, wouldn't that be the most awesome thing ever? That a community that could literally work for everybody, for all. So I was giddy. We were all, and perhaps it was because it was late night and we've been working on it for a long time. But if you think about that, that is the kind of community that will excel and reach the goals that we have for this region. I mean, we have so much potential in our region. And for me, that community that works for all means we have the ability to provide education and opportunity. Education, I know it goes without saying, but it's still very hard to deliver. The young people in our community need a quality education, because that then turns into an opportunity. And so, how do we do that? There are so many people doing great things around education, but I would ask that we double down on education, because, thank you. We really have to double down on education. And then I think we also have the opportunity to, focus on, so there's opportunity out there, and then there's helping people reach that opportunity, but it's also turning people into community service leaders. It's important, again, for us to all get back. And for me, the list might go on for a while, but I will never, ever, ever stop giving back to this community, because I believe in it and I believe in what's possible for us. The other thing about our community is, what is this sense of belonging about? We've had lots of conversations about it, and whatever it means for you, let's acknowledge that when we feel part of it, we're better. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And for me, I really ask everybody to think about, what does that mean for you? How do you advocate for yourself? How do we ask our friends, co-workers to listen to what that means for us? Because when we believe we're part of it, we're so much more impactful. There's a team that allows us to get things done that we otherwise didn't think about. And in Kansas City, I have seen with my own eyes, with my own interactions, what happens when we all come together. I mean, we mentioned the Liberty Memorial, the KCI Airport, tragedies, all these things that have happened. When we come together, we solve problems in a big way, and we move on to the next. We have a history of that. And I think it's time for us to do that again, relative to the vision we have for our region, diversity, equity, and inclusion. You mentioned George Floyd, and Carolyn and I have talked about this a lot. Post George Floyd, I had an opportunity to participate in a meeting with 245 CEOs of the largest companies in our country, top 500. And what came out of that were actions that were to be taken. Actions were mentioned earlier, really important, again. But the actions that came out of that were labeled the 3 Ps. And the CEOs of these companies, Fortune 500 companies, committed to the 3 Ps. The first P is people, the second P is purchasing, and the third P is philanthropy. And people meant be aggressive. In fact, the CEO of Merck said, we need to hire 1 million people of color and women into management positions over the next 10 years. Now, that's a bold goal, but if you aren't intentional and if you don't set goals that will change the landscape, we'll still be standing around here talking about who we're going to hire instead of creating leaders and getting the flywheel effect. So the first was people. And people means we have to go find them in places that maybe we didn't find them before. Just last week, I heard someone at a meeting say, well, it's impossible to find a black chief human resources officer. And I replied, well, you're looking in the wrong place, okay? And if you can't find one, it's incumbent upon you to create one. Give someone that opportunity. Give them that opportunity. And people also, in my mind, means, I know some of the people who were on this stage today, and when companies put their best leaders on this, wow. Looking at my friends over there at Commerce, too. So I'm just being intentional. It's not a check-the-box activity. It's a pour your heart into something that will change all of us, and especially the next generation. So P means purchasing, and how do we share in the purchasing? Associated with another board, and that chairman said, okay, our workforce is going to look just like the clients we serve. So that means 30% of our workforce has to be people of color and women. These positions will be held by someone in a minority category. We're not going to talk about it. Go find the people. You have to look for people differently. And oh, by the way, currently, 10% of our purchasing goes to minority businesses. Now it's going to be 30%. And our investments, at least 20% of our investments have to be in black-owned businesses. And if you can't find companies to give 30% purchasing to and 20% of our investments, we're going to start a capital fund and create a new business so that we begin to spread the purchasing and the investments. That's intention. The third, philanthropy, thanks to everybody who does it. Everybody. I think about the Gates Foundation, who just put in billions toward gender equity. Philanthropy is another important piece, and I'm not here to make a pitch about that. I'm just acknowledging that it happens, and it's a critical piece of this. So, for me, my journey isn't over, because all that I have talked about in terms of my experience and gratitude means that the next piece is a continuation of giving back to this community, giving back to my family. I'm so proud and honored to be part of the Royals and be on the Royals Charities Board, because we're all about the community. It's another way to give back. So I will continue to do that. My journey, hopefully my journey's not over, I'll say it that way. But honestly, it's really an honor to have this opportunity to talk to people about the journey and hopefully inspire people to be involved, get involved, and allow us to have the flywheel effect in Kansas City and make our place the region we all want it to be. And it's right there within our reach. Last thing I want to say, last category of things, is this is my appeal, and it's, in my view, one of the necessary ingredients to us being what we want to be. There are a lot of us who have gray hair, but I would encourage us and urge us to figure out how to include younger people, not only in our companies, on our boards, in the community. We should have a database of where young people are. It is extraordinarily difficult, I don't care what the company is or who the person is, to plan for somebody else and you don't have them at the table. It's hard. So my ask is that we figure out how to include younger people in some of the discussions in the boardroom, in the community, in your work groups, even if it's a little uneasy to think, well, they don't know what's going on. I'm just telling you, if we don't have the next generation engaged and involved, we're not going to get to where we want to be. I'll close with another young person, and it is Amanda Gorman. Some of you may know she was the poet at President Biden's inauguration. And she said this: "There's always a light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it." And that's what I want for Kansas City. Thank you so much.
Please welcome Executive Chairman and CEO of Opportunity Hub, Rodney Sampson.
Good morning. Well, I grew up in a Pentecostal church, so y'all got to do a little bit better than that. Good morning. Good morning. All right. Karen, thanks for your wisdom this morning and telling us a little bit about your journey as well. Let me first say thank you to Carolyn, to Joe, members of your board, and Greg, of course, for this opportunity this morning. And to all of the awardees, congratulations. I've met Andrea before, so shout out to you, Andrea. It's good to see Mark Hill, CEO of the Civic Council, and Sherry Gonzalez, Vice President and Director of KC Rising, and the KC Rising Diversity Committee member, Colette Black, who's Vice President, Chief Development Officer of the Urban League of Greater Kansas City. Good to see you as well. And of course, it's always good to see members of our OHUB team who are distributed across the country. And so Kyron Blanks, who helps to lead the learning and upskilling leg of our company, is here as well. It's good to see you, Kyron. Thanks for coming down. And of course, I'd like to thank all of you who have ventured out today to attend what is probably one of your first in-person events in almost a year and a half, and hopefully it won't be our last one, because folks are going to get it together. And shout out to the virtual attendees as well. I want to be intentional about centering our brief time together this morning on a new framework for operationalizing diversity, equity, and inclusion solutions throughout an organization. And I also have some breaking news, at least I think it's breaking news, that you'll hear first. I won't take up too much time telling you about myself. My bio's in the program, and of course, if you're on LinkedIn, which I'm sure most of you are, let's connect there. But I will say this, for over 20 plus years, I've been branded as an outlier in the technology, startup, and venture capital ecosystem. It's where I started my first company. It's where I sold my first company. It's where I failed at 2 other companies. And then I was fortunate, lucky, to be able to sell another one. And it is in this ecosystem where I was able to create multi-generational wealth for my family, and as some folks say, my children's children. But now I'm working on a greater mission, and that mission is to normalize seeing Black and brown folks like myself and you equitably represented in the 4th Industrial Revolution, a revolution that is changing the way that we live, work, and create wealth. For the first time in history, this industrial revolution, driven by automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum, augmented reality, virtual reality, blockchain, and beyond, presents us with the opportunity to build multi-generational wealth, hear this, with no reliance on pre-existing multi-generational wealth. So to make this a reality, in 2013, after the release of my 4th book, Kingonomics, 12 Innovative Currencies for Transforming Your Business and Life, inspired by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., my wife and I co-founded Opportunity Hub, affectionately known as OHUB. What started as a small 7,500 square foot technology startup hub in downtown Atlanta as a safe space for Black founders, technologists, innovators, and beyond, grew into the largest Black-owned multi-campus technology hub in the country, and now has expanded into a national platform that is part advocacy, policy formation, placemaking, ecosystem development, upskilling, recruitment, startup acceleration, and venture capital. Here are some of the national ecosystem partners that we're working with around the country on this work. Now, why DEIS? I've heard most of you today signal diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I'd like to present to you a new framework for your consideration. We added the S to DE&I, DEIS, say it, DEIS. Say it again, DEIS. We added the S to signal solutions. Why solutions? Because solutions require action. Actions require funding. And in our framework, if it isn't funded, it's just performative. I'll say it again, if it's not funded, it's simply performative. But first, the data doesn't lie. By 2053, the projected median wealth of a Black family in this country will be 0. And 2073 for Latinx families. Per McKinsey, Black America will lose 4.5 million jobs to automation. Today's technology ecosystem racial gap is 1.1 million Black and Latinx Americans, costing these communities $50 billion annually. And that's according to H&R Advisors. That's $1 trillion in the next decade, the next 20 years rather. Last year, we saw 39% unemployment in the Black community at the beginning of the global pandemic. In the startup ecosystem, we saw less than 1% of all venture capital, $156 billion, was invested in venture capital in 2020, while 41% of Black businesses closed their doors. And according to research by our friends at Harlem Capital, there have only been 305 Black and Latinx high-growth technology startup founders that have raised over $1 million in venture capital in the last 20 years. And I was one of the first ones in Atlanta 20 years ago. Think about that, 305 in 20 plus years compared to over 11,000, mostly non-Black and Latinx last year. So, a little bit about the framework. I've been working with the Brookings Institution as a non-resident senior fellow to codify what I hope will be a solutions-oriented framework for diversity, equity, and inclusion solutions. Let's say it again, DAIS. Come on, say it like you mean it, DAIS. I promise I'm not raising an offering today, so you can get into it. So the first part of DAIS is board and governance. And we've seen an example of that today in Karen. Simply appoint Black and brown folks to your board, just like that. It's not rocket science. You could do it. You could leave here today and you could do it. I believe we should also add a DAIS committee, just like we have an audit committee, we have a selection committee, we have a finance committee, whereas DAIS is now a fiduciary-centered part of your entire organization. The next part of the framework is talent, of course. Being intentional about where you recruit, where you source, and where you hire from. Going out of your comfort zone to go to historically Black colleges and universities, minority-serving institutions, even rapid upskilling boot camps. Maybe it's time to relax the requirement of a terminal degree for jobs that honestly don't require a terminal degree, like software engineers, UI, UX designers, cybersecurity specialists, software sales, growth, marketing. If you can do the work, you should be able to get the job. The next part of the framework is procurement. Spending money with Black, Latinx, Indigenous people of color, spending money with women, with veterans, with the LGBTQIA community, and beyond is an important way to stimulating economic activity in these under-tapped, under-sponsored communities. The next area, which is an area for the future in the framework, is product development and corporate innovation. As companies speed into the fourth industrial revolution and adopt artificial intelligence and machine learning and quantum computing, it's important that we think about how these new technologies may be harmful to certain communities, harmful to certain environments, and ensure that we have frameworks of equity and fairness so that products that are distributed in the marketplace, either on an enterprise level or on a consumer level, are actually bringing value to those respective communities. And more, we're seeing technology companies, legacy companies that have R&D and corporate innovation labs and corporate innovation initiatives are thinking about how these technologies will integrate inside of society. The next part of the framework of DAIS is investment. Karen spoke to this as well. Black businesses, we're not looking for charity. We want the investment capital to compete, grow, and scale in an open market. Last year, we advised PayPal on its $500 million investment in Black-owned venture funds, high-growth companies, and small businesses. Even companies like Foot Locker invested alongside our venture fund in Mac Ventures, which closed $110 million last year. And to your point, if you don't have a business that you're procuring from, invest in incubators, invest in accelerators, invest in seed funds, invest in startup support programs that are creating the future of those respective companies that, candidly, our RFP doesn't even exist for. A lot of innovation is hard to have an RFP for because you're just solving for it. And that's what's really driving 60% of the net new jobs in this country are being driven by automation-driven businesses. And the final part is impact, community impact. Last year, we saw our corporations double-clicking on increasing their philanthropic commitments into new organizations, perhaps organizations that didn't have the deep and long-term systems. They were like startup nonprofit organizations, and giving these organizations the grace to build boards and to build governance and to build systems is incredibly important. There are some amazing organizations that are doing the work across this country and on the ground and right here in Kansas City as well. Organizations that are teaching coding and entrepreneurship and how to actually build youth for the future. And so that's the 7-point framework. What's interesting is there are also value-added software and service-based companies, many of them created by Black founders to help to do this work. DEIS, when executed appropriately, funded appropriately, at scale, and not in a performative fashion, can also impact economic development or ecosystem development inside of our communities. Right here in Kansas City, the Kauffman Foundation has been a leader in putting forth a new framework for how cities and communities can not just focus on attraction and retention, but also can focus on innovation and creation. And so this new framework for ecosystem development is how cities are approaching the upskilling of their workforces and the creation of new businesses that can create community wealth for all. It is clear that equity, again, intersectional racial equity, and DEIS, let me hear you all say it, DEIS, should be at the center of our work, and I believe this fresh approach is a step in the right direction. If we get this right, we have the opportunity to reset the American ideal, construct, and dream so that finally everyone, everywhere in this nation can equitably participate in the technology ecosystem, future of work, fourth industrial revolution, and beyond. This will be our nation's competitive and unfair advantage globally. And with that, I'm excited to announce, where's the drum roll? With that, I am excited to announce a new initiative between the KC Chamber, KC Rising, the Civic Council, Him for Her, Diversity Window, and Opportunity Hub. The goals of this initiative are to appoint more Black, Latinx, and Indigenous persons of color to for-profit boards and hired to the C-suites of Civic Council and Chamber member companies. OHUB is committing a third of our placement fees to fund on-the-ground work for equitable technology, startup, and venture capital programming and work in the region. Yes, you can clap to that. Go ahead. Absolutely. All right. So here's our call to action. And if you have your phone, make sure you capture one of the screens very quickly to get the QR code. Why? Because the QR code will lead you to the website where you can learn more about the initiative. Ask your CEO to take a DEIS pledge. At that link, when you scan the QR code, your CEO or your board chair will be able to take it. The reason it's important for CEOs and board chairs to take it is because everyone in this room has already bought into DES. You don't require convincing, but perhaps your board chair or members of your board or your C-suite or other fiduciaries might be on the fence. And walking through this 20-minute pledge gives them an opportunity to think about this framework in different ways. The next ask is, let's get our CEOs certified. Let's get our boards certified. This fall, I'm partnering with UNC, Chapel Hill Kennedy Flagler School of Business, Duke University, and Stanford Technology Ventures program to offer a certificate program in diversity, equity, inclusion solutions. Imagine if when you walked in to meet with your CEO or your CFO, that it wasn't like you were speaking in tongues to them all the time and having to translate to them, but they took it upon themselves to become certified knowledgeable in DES. And the last important thing is partner with OHUB to appoint and hire. With that, I'm excited to announce that the Civic Council and KC tomorrow have signed on as our very first partner in this initiative. Thanks for listening, and please enjoy the balance of your day. Thank you.
Please welcome McCown Gordon, CEO and Chair-elect of the KC Chamber, Ramin Sharifat.
Good morning. How great is it to get together, right? I know you've heard it a couple of times already, but as Rodney said, hopefully we can all come together as a community and continue to gather like this in person, because these interactions and these stories are so much more impactful when we're here to hear them in person. I do want to just go off script here and thank again Karen Daniel for her leadership. And when she talks about paying it forward and getting other individuals in the community involved, she may not remember this, but 7 or 8 years ago, Karen and I had sat next to each other on a bus on one of the chamber trips, and she had a major impact on me, and it was because of her and that conversation that her and I had that I told myself I want to get more involved in the chamber. So please join me, not just to thank her on my behalf, but thank her on behalf of all of us for her leadership in this community. Thank you. You're a great role model. Well, thank you for joining us today for this wonderful event. And once again, our chamber staff, led by Greg Valvadino on this initiative, has done an amazing job of pulling together a program that's so important to the vital success of our community. And a special thank you to my colleague, Carolyn Watley. Carolyn, who will end her term as the board chair in November of this year. And Carolyn has led the chamber in Kansas City through one of the toughest years, actually 2 years, that any of us have been through probably in recent history. Her steady leadership and commitment have left us in a stronger place than we were before this started. So Carolyn, thank you. Perhaps nobody here is more thankful than me that you agreed to do this for 2 years during this tough time. So thank you so much for your leadership. Well, as the Chamber moves forward with the important and vital work of inclusive prosperity, equitable development, and supporting small businesses, please know that each and every one of us that are in this room today plays a role in supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion in our workplace, in our community, and in our personal lives. I'm particularly excited to look ahead to the work of Welcoming KC. You may have noticed the Welcoming KC pin on your tables today. That the Welcoming Coalition is about 40 organizations, which includes the KC Chamber, working to make Kansas City a certified welcoming city to help us embrace and welcome newcomers, immigrants, and refugees to the Kansas City community. Starting on September 10th, Welcoming KC will be celebrating Welcoming Week with the rest of the country. We'll share activities and ways you can get involved as both through your business and as an individual. Keep an eye on that in your inbox. Keep your Welcoming KC pin, please, on your collar. We encourage you to reach out to our diverse business committee and to even any of today's awards winners if you want to learn more about that program. So thank you so much for being here. The fact that all of us have made the commitment to be here in this room and support this program shows that we care about this community and we want to make Kansas City a better place. So that's it. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.
A million people in the crowd, but I only see your face in all the lights. And as the bass keep pounding on me, baby, I really wanna make you mine. I don't really care about love. I don't really care about happy ever afters. Something about you gives me hope.